Welcome to our third episode of CCL College Coach Live. Club Champions League is here with Lock Haven University head men's soccer coach Pat Long and head women's soccer coach Kathy Inslee. Coach Long was named head coach in January of 2016 after serving as an assistant coach for Bucknell University for the past 6 seasons. A former standout player for the Eagles, being named first-team All-Conference and Academic All-American, Coach Long has decided to return home where his successes first began. Coach Inslee is now entering her first season with the LHU women's program and brings with her over 20 years of collegiate experience, winning national championships both as a player and a coach. For the last 18 seasons, she served as the head coach of Young Harris College in Georgia, winning the 2006 Division I Junior College National Championship. So guys, thanks for being with us. And just to get started, what are some soccer-specific things you guys look for in players you recruit?
Hey, Jackson, it's Kathy. Let me hop in before we get started. My maiden name is Insel, and I have been married for a long time, and I go by Kathy Brown. So for all those people,
my goodness, so sorry.
Sorry, no problem. All right, sorry, Pat, you're up.
Yeah, all good. Jackson, thanks for having us, and thanks to the CCL. So soccer-specific things as we recruit and what we look for in players, really the technical, the tactical knowledge and technical skill levels, obviously very important, but something that I really key on when I go to an event or a game is really the work ethic of players. A strong work ethic, I think there's a direct correlation between that on the field and then also in the classroom as well. So work ethic is definitely something that stands out. And then another thing that I value is students of the game, people that are passionate about soccer. And I challenge my team regularly to try to love soccer as much as I do. It's a great sport. And the only way to get better is to watch it and learn from it and enjoy it day in and day out. So just a few things that I really value. I recruit and as I look for student athletes that could be potentially a good fit.
Awesome. Kathy, if you want to go.
Yep, and I think on the women's side, for me, I'm really drawn to the athleticism in the women's game. I think that, you know, the girl that can move quickly is someone that, you know, I certainly would be attracted to and hope that we could shape them and develop them technically and tactically and all of those things. But seeing that natural gift of athleticism, it certainly gives them a few extra points when we're out on the road looking for that girl that really stands out. And along with that is just, I like to call it grit. You know, I look for players that just fight. You know, I like pretty flashy, polished players, but I think the ones for me that really stand out that are going to just keep fighting and battling are the ones that that I'm drawn to. And, you know, I think every coach might be a little bit different in their preferences. And that's a discussion that that we have often. You know, do you prefer a technical player, or do you want just a great athlete? And so, you know, I think that, you know, recruits need to maybe ask those questions to college coaches as they're looking for a place to play.
Awesome. And so along those same lines, how big a role do your specific team needs play in your recruiting class? Is it harder for a player to be recruited as a striker if you have 3 players already there, or is there a certain standard where if a player meets that, you're going to take them on your team nonetheless?
Right. I think that that's a good question, but I would encourage recruits to not look at a roster and go, up, they've got 4 strikers, so I'm going to look at another university. I think that, you know, every coach out there is looking for the best player, so we're looking for talented players. You know, goalkeeping might be a little bit different in that respect, but I think that, you know, a lot of times if recruits look at a roster and say, oh, it looks like you're graduating 10 people in your senior class, there's wide open doors. It's not always the case. And so, you know, players need to just reach out if the university is a fit for them and ask the coaches what they're looking for and what their needs might be, and recognize that there's always changes. Like you know, last minute changes happen, and, you know, retention is very important to me. I want to keep my girls for 4 years, but, you know, things happen and injuries come and life happens, and sometimes there's changes that you might not see if you just look at a roster.
Kathy.
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's something that, again, Kathy hinted at. A goalkeeper is a little bit of a different situation, a different story. But from a field player perspective, versatility is really important. And again, as Kathy mentioned about athleticism, if somebody's athletic and they have a general understanding of the game, I would like to think that they can play a number of different positions on the field. When we go to recruit and we're watching maybe a center midfielder, we might say to ourselves, yeah, wow, they can really cope well at the U17 or U18 level in the middle of the field. But maybe in the college level, when they go to make that jump, their best position might be at more of a peripheral position, maybe an outside back or an outside midfield position. And mature and develop and get used to the college game, then maybe they move back into the middle of the field. That's a situation that's occurred. And I think the other thing I like to do is be a year out. I hope that freshmen are able to come in and have an impact. But at the same time, like I mentioned, it is a big jump. And players going from a high club and high school level to the college game need to understand that there's going to be some transitional time. And hopefully they adapt and cope quickly with the college game. But if there is that transitional time where they need to learn and develop a little bit, it might be a situation that we need to communicate with them through the recruiting process. But ultimately, if we can, as I look at recruiting, and we're looking to replace juniors, we're not looking to replace seniors, because it's tough to have that immediate fix as you lose a senior that maybe scored 10 goals for you. You hope it's likely, but it might not be realistic to know that a freshman's going to come in and grab 10 goals for you. So we need to have some flexibility with the recruiting process, but ultimately well-rounded players that embody those characteristics that we talked to in question one are really important about athleticism and tactical understanding.
So being a Division II school, you guys sit in a little bit of a unique spot where you don't have all the resources of some bigger Division I schools, but certainly have more means than most or all divisions, where you can provide some academic as well. So what are your biggest selling point you're sort of in between with your resources and the type of schools?
Yeah, the Division II motto is actually life in the balance. And I think that's a good kind of statement that can be made to embody what we are as a Division II institution, that we do look for that balance of the academic requirements and the standard that we hold our athletes to. Because ultimately they're in school to get a degree first and foremost. But then obviously we want to make sure that we're capitalizing and maximizing opportunities athletically. And the resources at times can be a little not at our disposal, ultimate resources that maybe some larger Division I schools might have. But if the passion is there from the institution to support us, and the alumni base is strong and the fundraising endeavors are going well, there's no reason at all that our student athletes won't have the utmost at their disposal in terms of resources and facilities, weight room restrictions, all that kind of stuff are really lifted if we do what we want to do and make sure that we're pushing towards developing our programs. And that's something that Coach Brown and I are both working towards, being that we're finishing our first year. Is really we're in a developmental stage that we're growing and getting bigger and stronger, and the passion is building. And not just the university, but the Lock Haven community is aware of some exciting times for the soccer program. So life in the balance is really a great way to kind of underscore what the Division II model looks like, and how we try to produce that and portray that to our student athletes.
I think I would just add, I think it's important for recruits to, find the right fit. And so what do we sell? NCAA Division II university. I think, we're selling good soccer. I think that these recruits need to come and watch us play and see what the level is. And then, of course, it needs to also be a fit for the recruits and the university itself. Is it a place that they want to go to study and get their degree and all of that good stuff? But I think the experience is very important. And wherever you decide to go and play, you're going to playing collegiate soccer at whatever level fits your talent is huge. And I think it can be one of the greatest times in your lives. I think that, you know, for me it was, and I hope that for all the girls that come through my programs, they get to have those experiences that, you know, regardless of the levels that you're playing, I think they're going to get to come in and play good soccer and just have the experience of a lifetime.
So how can a player best educate him or herself about your program once they understand some of these different aspects to determine if their personal experience and their interests would be a good fit for your program and your school?
Is that me?
Yep.
I say this all the time to recruits. They need to come watch. They need to get to some games, because we often get, you know, players that will call or write and say that they are great and they would be an awesome addition to our program, yet they've never watched us play or any other college teams play. And I think that, you know, it's a big part of the job of the recruit, not the recruit's parents, not the recruiting services they use, but the recruit, to have a desire to go and watch colleges play in their area. You know, if they want to go out of state or far away and that's not easy for them to, you know, come to Pennsylvania or go to Florida, whatever it is, they still, everybody has a university they could go and watch and get an idea of what soccer is like at different levels. But I think it's very important for them to do that. And it surprises me how many times I have recruits in the office that haven't watched maybe us play or any college soccer games, and that's usually surprises me.
I would just kind of add to that is just make sure they do their recruits should do their homework. As a recruit starts out maybe as a freshman or a sophomore in high school, what they're looking to do is take a large pool of schools and narrow and figure out what's the best fit for them. But as coaches, we're doing the same thing. We're starting with a pool of hundreds of kids that want to play college soccer, and as we learn more about them and we educate ourselves about them, we're narrowing and looking for the right fit for our program. So the simple things that recruits can do is make sure that they're understanding of the geography of the area, the size of the school, and one of the really important things is the academic component as well. Each school is going to have academic programs and majors that are maybe stronger than others. So doing their own homework to understand what they're looking for will help them to narrow. And then ultimately, Jackson, I think that it's vital that the communication between coach and recruit, coach and prospective student athlete, is honest and forthright, so that we can help them narrow their search and figure out if the soccer is the right fit. It shouldn't be our job to tell them that, no, we don't have your major. That's a conversation that we really don't want to have. We hope that the recruit is doing their homework to know that it is a good fit academically. It is the right size school for them. And then getting on campus, if that's the next step in the process, is going to be very important in terms of figuring out if that feel is there. So ultimately, the education needs to happen from us, learning more about them as people and players and students, but then ultimately the recruit, him or herself, needs to make sure that they are educating themselves to the universities that they're looking at, that are on their radar.
Awesome. And so once a recruit or a prospective student athlete determines that a school is on their list and is of high interest to them, what is the best way for these players to communicate with coaches? They spend tons of money on highlight tapes and recruiting services and crafting emails and phone calls. How do you guys like to receive communication from potential players?
Well, from the players directly is how I would first answer that. I mean, when we recruit, we're looking for the whole package, meaning the recruit, him or herself, but then also the family, the club that they're coming from. But what we're looking for when they are 16 and 17 years old is we're trying to get the best understanding we can for what they're going to be like when they're away from mom and dad and parents and siblings and guardians and club coaches and high school coaches, because when they're in college, it's time to grow up, and it's something that we are here to educate and support. That's our job and our role as coaches. But at the same time, we need to figure out through the recruiting process, are they? And is this somebody that we're going to have to really hold their hand through the academics and hold their hand to make sure that they're on time to soccer-related activities and things like that. But highlight tapes are helpful. I know recruits are spending money on that kind of stuff and recruiting services. So it's helpful. It gives us a glimpse. It'll give us a look at what somebody has athletically, technically. But I think my personal opinion is I want to see somebody with my own eyes. I trust club coaches, and their reputation is very important. So they're going to hopefully be honest and upfront with us as college coaches. But at the end of the day, it's my program, and I need to make sure that I see players with my own eyes to then communicate to them honestly about where I potentially see them fitting in. Social media is something that I think is very important and that coaches will look at, and recruits need to know that there are eyes on them all the time. So the communication element, whether it be email, texting, phone calls, I really value during this process, are all very important. And there's so many different avenues for us to communicate, but ultimately for recruits to know there's so many avenues for us to kind of monitor and track as well. So it's very important that they are staying on top of things and doing things in a professional manner and not putting anything out there that potentially could be detrimental to them in the recruiting process. So all those things are very important as recruits are looking to figure out what school might be the right fit for them. Coaches are doing the same thing, and we're trying to figure out what recruits are the right fit for us.
And I would just add, I love to see things that are very personal. And I would say personal and persistent. We get tons and tons and tons of stuff from recruits all the time. And, if we don't, we try to, and I know Pat has a good policy to try to respond within, I don't know, he has a 24 hours or something. So he's good about that. But we get so many, if we happen to miss with a response, to be persistent. And especially if you're very interested in our university or whatever universities you're looking at, to keep, and that's via email, phone calls, get on campus, whatever it takes. If you want to go to a school, you need to do the work and be persistent with those coaches. And then the personal part is just, the standard stock letters. Like those they come from recruiting services. I much would prefer, something very personal from a recruit that stands out. And I think I had a recruit one time, and it was almost a strange experience, but I loved it. She was on campus and she looked me in the eyes and said, "Coach, do you love soccer?" And I thought, of course I do. And it was recruits don't use, I'll never forget her face because she loved the game. And she asked me as a coach if I loved soccer. And I thought, those sort of things, really stand out and set people aside. I'm thinking, if I've got a player that's asking me if I love the game, I know she loves the game. And those are the things that I think as we go through the list, like when they can stay, fresh in our minds, it's helpful. And then the persistence part of it, I think, for recruits to understand the point about us not being able to return phone calls when they're younger. I get a call probably, and I won't say any names, but once every other week I get a call from a young player, and she just leaves, "Hey, just checking in, saying hello," and I don't forget her name, even though I don't talk to her, but she's following up and being persistent for a long time now at a young age. And I think those are all good things that recruits can do. And then I think, Pat alluded to the fact that we take all of this stuff. We'll take highlight tapes. We'll take it all, social media, and whatever we can get, we're going to pile that all together. At the end of the day, watching them in person is the best way to go. But we also will take all of the other stuff along with that.
Well, great. Thanks, Kathy. So Once they've communicated with you and there's sort of a relationship building and they decide to take a visit to your school, what should players hope to get out of this visit? Are there questions that you really expect from them and questions they should avoid? Is it okay to ask about scholarship or playing time? What are things you like to see?
Okay. First, I think that when a player comes to campus on a visiting, I think is they've got to feel it's got to be a fit, and I think that that's hard to define. That's not anything specific, but they're coming basically to see how they can envision themselves, at the university. Can they picture that? So, I think that it's important for them to get to meet the players, to spend some time with players, without the coach saying, "Oh, this is the greatest place in the world," but really ask the players on the roster and get, good questions for girls that are already going through it. What's the hardest point? What does the coach really like? Really ask those questions while they're there. And then your scholarship question, I think that's a good question. People need to ask that question, but I think the biggest thing that I would say with that is make sure the timing is right. I mean, I have 4 kids, and I understand that money is tough, and scholarship, everyone's looking for it and wondering, but I certainly wouldn't recommend saying, "Coach, I need a full scholarship," and that comes in the first email that you send. It's a bit of a turnoff. No matter what level player that is, there just needs to be a little respect and a little bit of timing in their approach. But I think I understand that it's important for some people. If it's unrealistic and they can't afford to be at the college, they need to ask how can they afford, and how can the package either other outside scholarships or academic scholarships or athletic scholarships. I mean, I think it's okay to ask those questions, but I do think that the expectation that I'm going to get a full scholarship in the first conversation is a bit of a disrespect.
The getting on campus is something I alluded to earlier, and it's vital to the process. And if the communication between recruit to the point that a college visit is very important, that come to that visit prepared. And it's something that's a pet peeve of mine. If I sit down in the office with somebody when they first arrive on campus and I just open it up and I say, "What questions do you have for me?" And the young man says, "No, Coach, I'm good. I don't have any." Blows my mind. You have to have something on your mind. And to be honest, Jackson, I don't care if it's, "Coach, who's your favorite team? What position did you play?" Anything to let me know that there's interest, that there's intrigue, that somebody wants to learn a little bit more. Walking around, you're going to get a feel on every campus that you step foot on, but coming prepared to ask questions that you can't find is going to be very important. And it gives us an idea of hopefully trying to figure out what kind of shell you come in, meaning how quickly are you going to break out of that shell. And obviously it might be tough for a 17-year-old to look a head coach in the eye and start grilling him with questions. We want to know what this person's all about. And if they come, I mean, I've even had somebody come into the office and I say, "What questions do you have?" And they pull out a sheet of paper and they read, "Coach, question 1. I enjoy that. It tells me that they're thorough, they're detail-oriented, they want to help themselves to learn more about this experience." And Kathy mentioned it a little bit about money. I mean, maximize every opportunity you get on campus, and whether it's sitting down with a head coach or an assistant coach or an admissions counselor, or if you get the chance to meet some students or student athletes from the team, don't just sit there. Ask questions and get a feel for what the whole institution has to offer. Regarding scholarship, I'm in agreement with Coach Brown in regards to it shouldn't be the first question or the first sentence in an email about the hope or the demand sometimes for money. Schools have, Division II schools will have some athletic scholarship money, but that conversation typically won't happen until a little bit towards the end of the recruiting process, not the the end when somebody's about to make a decision, but I'm saying the end in terms of us learning more about the recruit, or if it is a good fit. And at the end of the day, that's our decision, who is offered athletic scholarship money. And we need to look at a lot of different factors. I think I would say that 100% of people, maybe 99% of people that come to visit would want money. There's no doubt about it. Everybody would like money. But Coach Brown hit the nail on the head. You're probably going to be more prone to getting money outside of athletic money, meaning foundation scholarships and academic money, and putting in the work where maybe an institution can't say no to you if you meet a certain threshold academically, whether it be an SAT score or GPA, where you're going to qualify for academic money. That's something that some institutions can't say no. From an athletic scholarship perspective, it's up to the coaches to determine and communicate to the recruits whether or not they're deserving of athletic money. It's a very important question to ask, but I would echo Coach Brown completely in that timing is very important. And ultimately, I would like that question to come from the recruit and not the parent. And I would say a lot of the time it does come from the parent, where I say, are there any questions? And the recruit asks me 3 or 4, and they're good questions, and they're not money related. And then I go to the parents and I say, what questions can I answer for you? And maybe then the parent says, well, what are the scholarship opportunities? Again, I would rather that come from the recruit rather than the parent, but it is something that I would say is important for recruits to consider, but just be cautious with how they word it, and when the timing of the question is very important.
So shifting gears a little bit here from the recruiting stage to the experience, what do you think the biggest transition is for players from the club and high school level to the college game?
Are you talking athletically or academically?
Both.
Both. From an academic perspective, time management is it's crucial. And players that are playing high school ball and then also club ball, where they're traveling all over potentially the Mid-Atlantic, and they're still maintaining a solid GPA, that gives us a pretty good indication that they manage their time pretty well. It's a lot of time in a car and in hotels at tournaments, still doing well and putting out a GPA that they would be proud of, and that coaches would sit back and say, okay, well, this could be a good fit academically. It gives us a good indication of time management. Again, a very basic and general indication, but it's something that's important. In time management in college, you don't have mom and dad at home. I mean, in terms of being there when you get back from class or when you get back from practice. So figuring out what works for you, and whether or not you work well late at night and you're going to be in the library at midnight getting work done, or if maybe you don't work well at night, maybe you're an early riser and you got to get up early and get maybe your lift in, and then you're studying and getting prepared for an 8 a.m. class. Time management is something that I would really encourage freshmen, but more so sophomores, but definitely juniors and seniors as they're getting close and getting prepared to head off to college, to make sure that that's a priority for them, is that management of time. And that's one way to help the transition from high school. And then from an athletic perspective, I think I would say being critical of oneself is something that I would really encourage prospects to do. And what I mean by that is when you come home from practice or you come home from a game, think to yourself, what could I have done better? And that's one way that I think it's gonna motivate you. It's gonna give you the opportunity to strive for a higher level. And it's a pet peeve of mine a little bit when somebody comes off the field, or the next day in the office, we're going through a film session, and before we start, I just say, well, talk to me about your play in the game. And they mention 3 or 4 things that they did extremely well. And then they say, well, Coach, I think I could have done this a little bit better. I really respect somebody that comes in and yeah, they might have scored a goal and had an assist, but the first thing they say is, Coach, I should have had 2 goals. I should have got more crosses into the box. I should have been more dynamic in the attacking third. Those are things that say to me as a player, as a student of the game, wow, this person really wants to develop. This person really wants my help, and they're really thriving for more. They want to get better. They want to improve. And when they say that and they start out with that mentality, it gives me a better perspective for what they're trying to get to. And then they finish with, yeah, coach, I want to improve on those things, but ultimately I did score a goal. I had an assist, but I think I can do more, rather than the opposite, where I did well and I'm doing things well, and I think that I'm really hitting a good standard. I'm going to say that's great. I want more from you. An expectation that I have, and kind of something that I'm going to continuously push on the field, but then also academically, is that don't come away from a test where you got a B thinking, oh, I did well, I got by. Think to yourself, man, it should have been a B+. It should have been an A-. And I think those are life lessons that those small and maybe minuscule at the time, for the time being, are going to really help bigger picture when somebody leaves college and is entering the workforce in the real world, to constantly think to themselves, how can I get better? To be something on the field or in the workplace or in the classroom as a high school student or college student.
And I would say women's soccer historically, have been academically a really talented kids in the classroom. So I think sometimes we spend time talking to recruits about, like, a lot of them are afraid, how hard is it going to be and how can I do all of this? And I think, there's absolutely no reason why anyone can't be successful in college if they apply themselves. And, you're going to go in, you're going to have academics, you're going to have soccer. And if you minimize the social part of it, which is where sometimes, Pat alluded to the time management and that sort of thing, it's not a crazy different jump from, what these girls are already doing when they're in school from 8 to 3. Then they go home, grab a quick bite to eat, and off they go to travel soccer, and they're playing on the weekend. They're used to that sort of a schedule. So academically, they're having to do, study in the car. And so the workload is different. It's a little bit more writing and that sort of thing at the college level. But in school from 8 to 3 every single day, and they do have time if they apply their themselves and they study when they have the downtime, so that they can get to training and be prepared for those things. And we also have lots of help. I'm saying there's tutors, there's study hall, there's all kinds of options for success academically. Then the transition athletically, I think the biggest thing that we see with girls coming in, depending on what level they're coming from, the elite clubs that are coming in that have been training hard and traveling, playing at a good high level, are mostly prepared for the next jump. But sometimes we have players that aren't training as often, and they're only training 2 or 3 times a week. And then they get to college and they're training every day, but one mandatory day off. That's a lot on the body. And the speed of play is much quicker. It's stronger. It's just a little bit more powerful. And so I think that there is a bit of a transition from to what they're going to do. But if they're prepared, if they're as fit as they can possibly be, and they're prepared physically for that transition, and they are, training every day coming into the collegiate season, I think that they'll be okay. But if not, if they're only used to practicing, 2 days a week with a game on the weekend, their body, they'll struggle. And then there'll be injury, there'll be shin splints, there'll be quad pulls, like they'll struggle. And then that's a tough situation to be in for a freshman, when they're coming in wanting to prove themselves. Coming in and not having their bodies ready is a big issue.
And with all these expectations in mind that you have at your programs academically and athletically, what would be the most important thing a potential student athlete could do before entering college to give themselves a head start with soccer as well as with grades?
Right. I think there's a lot of things you can do to prepare, and we're seeing a lot of students academically that are taking a college course or 2 prior to entering. I think that's a lot of the high schools have programs in place, and I mean, I have girls coming in with more credits than I probably want them to be, because they're going to finish before I'm ready to be done with them. But if you're taking a class or two, and it's not a mandate for a freshman to do that, but once I get the girls here for a year, even, going into their sophomore year, to take a chemistry class or an extra class in the summer is absolutely a good thing. So that when you are in season and you do have that heavy workload, you might not have to take 18 hours in your junior year. You might be able to take a little bit less and have just a little bit more time to breathe. So that would be my thoughts academically on that. And was there another question to that?
So from a soccer perspective, what do you think the most important thing they could be doing to help them get a head start?
And then I kind of mentioned that a little bit earlier, but I think every coach is going to send a fitness packet to the incoming players, and we are not allowed per NCAA to track that and request times to come in at the Division II level, but they'll get a packet advising them what to do. They should follow the coach's advice and work very, very hard. And in my experience, I love freshmen. I think typically freshmen work very, very hard in the summer because they're very scared. And so sometimes it's my sophomores that are already here that I worry about, because it's going to be hard. And so they may or may not do what they need to do. Upping the intensity in the summertime for an incoming freshman is huge. They need to up, their training, how many days they're training. I mean, I do think, every day, but one day off is a good thing to do. And not just going out for jogs and, saying I ran 4 miles. That's not enough for college. If you run 4 miles, maybe you do interval training within that. And I think if they have general questions like that, any college coach would be happy to say, hey, this would be my advice. And my advice would be listen to what they say.
To get a head start academically, I would agree with Kathy, just in that take challenging courses and prepare yourself for college through maybe honors courses and AP courses. If you have the opportunity to go to a local community college or something and get a 3-credit course under your belt, it just gives you an idea so that on campus and that first day of class, it isn't new to you. You have an understanding that it's going to help you to make that transition a bit smoother, and you've got a jump start. Academic perspective, I hinted at the time management earlier, and Coach Brown hinted at the pricing and really figuring out ultimately you need to be first, your athletic commitment needs to be second, and then your social life needs to be third. And if any of those 3 get out of order and you're spending more time on social media than you are field or in the classroom, then that's a problem. If you're spending more time on the field than in the classroom, that's a problem. And that's where, again, as coaches, we're here to advise, to suggest, to guide. Prospective student athlete enters college becoming a student athlete, and they have their priorities in order. First, they're an athlete second, and then they enjoy their college experience third. And that's a very important part of it, enjoying their college experience. But it has to be third. It's got to be the third level. And that's just a way to look at it. As if you're a high school junior, approach every day that way, that you take your academics level, then soccer commitment, and then you enjoy your social life. I would just consider and encourage prospects to hopefully get a good jump start on their preparation for the college. From an athletic perspective, fitness is very important, and then challenging themselves to play at speeds that are uncomfortable, and that's in training, that's in games. The speed of play, the physicality increase. It's going to be amplified exponentially. To go from being a stud 17 or 18-year-old to competing against 22-year-olds, maturation-wise, developmentally. So when you're at training, don't do things that are comfortable. A little bit uncomfortable, and make mistakes. And if you're making mistakes because you're challenging yourself and you're pushing a level, it's going to help you training ground and you're surrounded by players that are bigger, stronger, faster, and have been playing at a higher level. That speed of play is going to be something that is going to be very important. And freshmen that come in that can cope athletically, have a speed of play understanding that they need to do it at a fast pace, then they're going to be more likely to play. But freshmen that come in and maybe they aren't ready for the speed of play, it's going to take a little bit of time, and maybe it means that they just get a few minutes as a freshman as they look to make that close that gap. But freshmen that have an impact need to do everything they can from a fitness perspective, challenge themselves with their speed of play, and then just enjoy the game and play as much as possible without burnout. And that's something that I talk to my guys about it. And in terms of enjoying their summers, pushing it, reporting to preseason in the best shape of their lives, but don't drained. Don't report to preseason burnout. Report to preseason fresh and energized, and all the soccer that's on TV and in people's backyards and stuff. Get out, watch the games, enjoy it, and then use that as a tool to motivate yourself to do things at a higher level, at a faster pace. And those are things that I think can help jump and hopefully have an impact sooner rather than later at the college level.
Awesome. And so just a couple more questions for you guys. And Pat, you touched on this a little bit. Do you recommend that your players before coming into school find a team where they're playing with older players? The CCL has a Pro 23 league, and there's some other leagues out there. Do you guys try and find teams like this for your players in their respective areas or where they come from? What's your suggestion that are on your team and trying to remain sharp?
Yeah, if we can help in any way, we will. Playing is important. It's an important part of the summer. But we have to be realistic as well to know that some players need to go home and work away from a playing opportunity. And some players, more so sophomore into junior year, but even junior into senior year, need to be looking for internships as they prepare for their final years of college and stuff. I'd want my guys to play at the highest level possible, whether it be league or an MPSL league or PDL or a level where they're competing against maybe older, more mature, faster, stronger players. And if they do that, then ultimately it's going to help them when they come back ready to play at a fast pace and be ready to have an impact and be effective as soccer players. Encouraged to find the highest level possible based on their surroundings. Players come from different backgrounds. I have some guys that come from some rural areas where there's nothing competitively at all. So those guys need to really be intrinsically motivated, prepare themselves, and be running on their own and training on their own, because maybe they're not in an area, a large population, and there's good soccer right in their backyard. Some of my guys are fortunate that they go home to an area like Lancaster or Philadelphia or Richmond or Frederick, and they can go home and play at a high level, which is great. It excites me for them, but I also have to be understanding of everybody's situation's different, and I've got to help them individually figure out what's the best fit for them over the 3 months that we're not allowed to be with them. And that's following NCAA rules, and it's very important. We can help, but we can't be right there holding their hand through the whole summer. There's got to be that trust factor that they leave us in May, and for some of the guys, we won't see them till mid-August. So they need to know the expectation levels and come back with an energy that says to us, "Hey guys, let's get after it. Let's get on the field and let's enjoy it."
Agree. I'd always encourage the girls to play at the highest level possible through the summer. It's not always an option, and I think that depending on where they live and what they're close to, and even how good a player are they. I think some of the players I worry the most about are the ones that are maybe not as talented as the top kids. The top kids, people are asking us if they can come play. The other kids are the ones that I sometimes worry about, and those are often the ones that maybe aren't as connected and don't live in the areas that that they can, play at the highest level. But, player on the roster should make an attempt to do their homework. We go back to that and figuring out what is around them. And sometimes I think, I find that not every women's soccer player out there really does their homework and figuring out what is out there for women, because it hasn't always been around for them. And it's not something that is just a known thing that, the girls can play here, here, here. But I think they need to do their homework and figuring out what they can do. And if possible, play as much as they can at the highest level.
Awesome. And so last question for you guys. Playing soccer collegiately is a huge commitment. From your personal experience as a coach and as a player, why is it worth the investment? What are some of the biggest payoffs?
That I think playing, every day I sit in the office and I'm like, man, this is a great job. I love soccer. I've loved it since I was a kid. I loved everything about it. And I think on my collegiate experience, shout out to Becky Burley, University of Florida. I didn't play there, but I think that you go through and meet teammates that become, just important people in your lives. And it's just such a neat thing to go through if you go and find a place that's the right fit for you and you play at the right level for you and all of those things. If you can find that, you'll have the time of your life. And if you're not having the time of your life, you need to figure out why. Don't just give up. Maybe you were homesick as a freshman and you got to give it a chance. You got to make good decisions going into the recruiting part. You got to make sure you try your best to find the best fit for you, but don't give up in the first, couple of months, because it's not easy as a freshman to transition. Give it a chance. And if you do that, by the time you're, 4 years go by and you're walking across the stage and you've met the friends of your life, and it's awesome. I can't even imagine life without soccer.
I think it's a great question to end on. I mean, as a student athlete, it was something that I thoroughly enjoyed, and I think it helped prepare me for the real world. And again, I stayed in the game as a college coach, but I look at my teammates and I look at guys that I've coached the last few years, and their experiences and what coaches instilled in them are huge payoffs for them to be successful in life, in terms of being on time and being detail oriented and just going about a competitive lifestyle day in and day out. And if somebody's waking up each morning thinking to themselves, how can I get better? How can I improve? How can I make the most of this day? I think that student athletes do that on a daily basis, and I think it's exciting to say. So those are qualities that I think that are huge payoffs for student athletes when they're in college, but then when they're leaving to be successful. And I echo what Kathy said just about I love my job. I love the game. I love being a part of it. The recruiting process, it intrigues me so much, and I thoroughly enjoy it, because ultimately, I mean, what I feel like I'm doing is I want to win games, but I want to do it with the right people. And I need to learn a lot about recruits, and I need to bring in classes that are going to mesh well together. And ultimately, I mean, Jackson, you can look at your experience, and I bet some of your best friends were some of your college teammates. And Coach Brown would say the same thing, and I would say the same thing about mine. Whether being best men in somebody's wedding or a groomsman, and you meet lifelong friends, and you have lifelong memories that keep you a tight-knit group, and those are huge payoffs. So as college coaches, we're matchmakers. We're probably bringing students to this campus that we need to figure out, is it the right fit? And if we fall in love with them and they fall in love with the institution, then we've potentially got a nice match that ultimately we're probably going to bring them in, and they're going to find a best friend, a lifelong friend, and make friends that are just going to constantly be there for them and be supportive. And you're going through a stage in your life where it's really special, and the opportunity to compete athletically in the NCAA is pretty cool. And if you can lift some trophies along the way, it makes it extra special. But ultimately, our role is to prepare student athletes for the real world. And by doing so, we're hopefully instilling all those little things that we embody as coaches and we embody as student athletes. And those are the payoffs. Those are the things that can really help somebody to just be successful and look back at their college career and say, wow, that was awesome. I really enjoyed that. And if that's the case, then they've made a good decision.
Jackson, I forgot to mention, I think it's also a big payoff other than the lifelong friendships and the fun factor. Like, it's going to be a huge payoff in networking and the people that and, your athletic director and your compliance people and even other coaches. When you need something, you'll have an automatic support base of people that will help you. If you've done your thing and you spent 4 years college soccer or whatever sport you choose, you've got a network of people at your university that will be there for you for your lifetime. And so I think that's huge.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Coach Long and Coach Brown, for your time and your insight and providing us with some valuable information about the recruiting process and the college game. And thanks to all who tuned in, and make sure to message us on Facebook at Soccer CCL with suggestions for our next episode. That's all for tonight, and we hope to see you at the next CCL College Coach Live.